Hey and welcome to the EYFDM Podcast, brought to you by the EYFDM Podcast team. This podcast is accompanied by a study on listening behavior. Nadine, what's the study about?
Hey Fabian, I'm always listening to podcasts when I'm on my way to university every day. And I'm sure most of you are listening to podcasts too in your everyday life. But have you ever wondered how different podcasts influence your career choices or your personal life?
Well, if you want to find out more about the study, there's a link underneath this podcast in the bio. And now,
have fun with our EYFDM podcast.
Hey and welcome back to our 7th episode of the EYFDM podcast. My name is Fabian and today we are recording from Salzburg, Austria. And again, I have a very special guest here today, someone who's been very involved with EYFDM and primary care in Austria, Dr. Anna Hansemann. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Anna, you have a very busy life, so thank you very much for taking the time today. You were heavily involved in the HOC organizing committee as the lead for the EYFDM forum this year in Vienna, which is something that most of our listeners probably want to hear about, what your experience was. But also, besides being a family medicine specialist, you're also very heavily involved in primary care with your special interest. How did you manage to actually set up all the work for EYFDM and at the same time being a working clinician?
That's a good question. If you're working for something you're really proud of and you have a lot of fun with this topic, I think it's not that much of work, but it's also something you like to do in your free time. So, yeah.
How much free time do you have? I mean, give us a quick overview. You're a specialist in family medicine, but palliative care, it's not an easy field to work in, I guess.
Yes, I'm working in palliative care now in a hospital, and I'm working part-time, so I'm working for 16 hours, 2 days a week, and there are also one weekend I on call. But I also have a busy family life with three children, so I have 3 free days a week.
That's really cool.
But they are also quite occupied with family life. But I use the time in the mornings when children are at school, for example, where I can also work for like EYFDM, organizing the forum or recharging my batteries and take care of myself.
I think every single GP that we spoke to in this podcast has some kind of deal where they work less clinical hours. Was it hard for you to get this implemented with your employer, to tell them, hey, look, I have my academic interests, my policy interests, my public health interests, my family life interests? Was that hard to implement?
Actually, I was lucky because there weren't more hours left I could take because a colleague stepped back from her full-time work, so there were 2 days free and I could start at that department. So that wasn't hard at all. Because they were looking for somebody who was working part-time. And also I did most of my training I did in part-time because of my family life. And I think it's in the hospital and also the practice where I did my training, it was possible to work part-time because there's a shortage of family doctors and a shortage of trainees. So you
could pretty much dictate
yes,
terms.
I could say, okay, I want to work like 32 hours or 28 hours. So I didn't have to share a place with somebody else, so doing really half time, but I just could dictate how many hours I would want to work.
I mean, that's a big privilege, I guess, especially if you listen to older generations who keep on going on about how hard it was back in the day. So I think we are very blessed in that sense. Still, I mean, you make it sound very easy. Family medicine or primary care in Austria, can you quickly give us an overview what the specialty standing in Austria is? Because Austria is one of the very few countries where family medicine is not a fully accredited specialty yet.
Yes, that's true. And I think, so most of the training is done in the hospitals. So you are trained by other specialists. And you often hear, okay, which specialty do you want to to choose after family medicine because it's quite common to begin the training for family medicine and then switch to another specialty. And to stay in the field of family medicine and say, no, that's something I want to do is sometimes hard during the training because it's also like the training in the family medicine practice is on the end of the training. So you're nearly 3 years in hospital and do your rotations, and then you go into a practice and work with other family doctors. But I think the work with the Austrian young family doctors and EYFDM is something that really helped me to stay inspired by family medicine and to stay proud to be a family doctor, because you need your role models and you won't find them during the training in the hospital because those are specialists.
So you were one of the few exceptions really who knew you wanted to go into family medicine prior to leaving the hospital. So you were at the hospital, you were already sure that this is what you wanted to do?
Yes, I was sure that is what I wanted to do when I started my training, because you have clinical rotation at the end of your studies in med school where you also stay with a family physician for 1 month.
And that's what caught you on? Is that what hooked you into family medicine?
Yes, that's what brought me into family medicine.
Interesting, isn't it? How role modeling plays a major role in our life choices.
Yes. I think having working with a family physician very early in your training is quite important to see what work as a family doctor looks like. Because, then you stay in the hospital for your hospital rotations and you don't...
you have a clear goal where it's heading.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting. And do you get to pick and choose the specialties at the hospital, or is someone telling you what you have to do as a rotation?
There's a curriculum where part of the rotations are dictated. They are fixed. And some of them you can choose. So, yeah.
Do you remember what you picked?
Yes, neurology and throat.
Oh, okay. So quite diverse. So you had internal medicine, ENT, and then neurology?
Yes, and traumatology, pediatrics, obstetrics, psychiatry. Yes.
Oh. So a bit of everything. I think if you listen to a lot of GPs, the ones that really excel at their job, they've done quite a few specialties in their training. So it's really interesting that that's a possibility in Austria as well. It's very interesting. You mentioned YAMO and EYFDM. Can you quickly tell our listeners what YAMO is?
Yes, YAMO are the young Austrian family doctors. It's like EYFDM on a national level. And we are doctors and also students who are interested in family medicine during the training and in the first 5 years after finishing the training. And yes, we are like the voice for young family doctors. We are organizing conferences. Yes, and at the moment we are also quite active in creating the specialty for family medicine, because there's now a change and there is a law that family medicine becomes a specialty as the other specialties.
Yeah, so a lot of policy work, I guess.
Also policy work,
and I think besides having 3 children doing medical school, becoming a family doctor, being at the hospital, you're also quite interested in public health?
Yes, yes, that's true. I started a Master of Public Health some years ago, and I should finish my master thesis now. Yeah. I'm not so sure if this will be done until the summer, but yes.
It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda, yes. And it's something I really enjoyed during my training, because it was a master or a part-time master. So I
postgraduate master besides work, I guess.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. So I had 1 weekend per month where I had lectures, and I think it's really nice to have. You have the view from inside the health system as a health worker, and then you have the view from on a more structural level, a more systematic level, and I think that really helps to understand why things are done like they are done.
It's also something I found happens a lot. So when you started when we started this podcast, you said, I'm only working a couple of days, but at the same time, you have all this policy work, you do a part-time master's, you've got 3 children, so you organized the entire conference this year in Vienna. I think it's very common for us GPs to say, I'm only working part-time, but it's not really part-time work, is it?
Yes, it's part-time paid work.
It's part-time paid work. So you spoke a bit about JAME and EYFDM. Do you remember your first forum?
Yes.
What was your first forum?
It was in Portugal.
Yeah.
And actually I was looking for an international conference for young GPs because my husband, he's a pediatrician. He went to a conference for young pediatricians. And I thought, I want to do something that's similar. And so I just Googled for like European young GPs. I don't remember, but that's where I found the forum. And after that, I asked also at a JAME conference if somebody else is going there. And it was a great experience.
Do you remember when you went to Porto, would you have thought that a couple of years later you would be the lead of the host organizing committee of your own young GP conference?
No, absolutely not.
So what changed? What made you become the lead of the host organizing committee?
I think it's a process because even when we started bidding for the forum, so there's a bidding process, which started, I think, about 2 years ago. I was saying, yes, I want to be part of the team. And then in the process, okay, I'll be like co-president. And then we decided to have a presidential team where we are equal presidents for the forum, Jonas, my colleague, and I. It was really like a process. And at the beginning, I would have never said, okay, I want to be the president of the forum because I didn't think that I could do that. But step by step in this process, I started to feel more confident about leadership.
Do you remember when you first came up with the idea of the Forum 2024 in Vienna?
Actually, it wasn't my idea. It was like some month before the forum in Edinburgh, because there we already had the idea. And it was, some colleagues from JAME who said it would be great to have a forum in Austria and that we have the funds for a forum in Austria. It's also a financial issue.
And can you take us through the bidding process? So after that, what happened? So you went to Edinburgh, great forum, by the way, a bit hit by COVID.
Yeah.
It was quite an experience. I remember having to take a test at the airport for actually being able to go into the city.
Yes.
That was an interesting forum, really good. Well done by the host organizing committee. What happened then in your Austrian team?
We got in touch with the events officer of EYFDM. So there are guidelines for the events. You have to, there are certain points you have to fulfill for a forum. And so we had this events guide and we knew what we would need for it. It was also quite a special time because there were no other candidates for a forum at that time. So we didn't really have a deadline because they told us, yes, the deadline is when somebody is bidding. It's open because they already had a deadline and nobody
had applied.
I think it was also due to COVID because everything was so insecure. So we had this guide and so for a bid you have to set up a team of a host organizing committee. You have to have already the venue. You have to propose a budget for the forum. So I think those are the most important things. And yes, like a scientific program, but you don't have to have your keynote speakers yet, but just a quick overview and also when you want the forum to take place.
Was it a lot of work?
Setting up the bid? Yes, it was some work because like finding a venue which is suitable
and
wasn't
affordable.
Affordable wasn't that easy, especially in Vienna, because also with the universities it wasn't easy to find something. There was quite a lot of work in setting up the bid.
And then I remember you winning the bid, and then how did it get started? Did it get easy after that, or was it a walk in the park, or?
I think it has had some ups and downs. With winning the bid, we already had the venue, for example, and we already had some sponsors because we knew we couldn't do it without them. So there were some sponsors who that was organized before.
Yeah.
But then, like setting up a homepage, for example, or the registration process, we were lucky to have an organization who did the registration for us. But it was also quite a lot of work to tell them what we need for the registration, and sometimes there were like times with a lot of work when things like catering or had to be organized. Also for the scientific committee, you have this call for abstracts, but then screening all the abstracts, it's quite a lot of work, and then there is a deadline where it has to be done.
Wow. So well done. I think it was probably the biggest forum, at least for the last couple of years, for sure. Do you remember how many people attended?
Yes, we had 273, I guess.
Oh, wow. Well, that's actually a big forum, I guess. And I mean,
yes,
you all did it as a hobby, really.
Yes, we planned it for 200 people actually, but we were sold out very quickly. so we had
that's
the
good
possibility.
news, I guess, because better being sold out than not being sold out. So Anna, we always play a game in this podcast.
Yes.
It's adapted from a German podcast, and you might have heard, or you might have listened into one of the other episodes. It's a fun game. We have about 50 word pairs, and you can always say skip or next. Ideally up to 5 times, but I mean, I'm not going to force you to answer, obviously. Are you ready for the game?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Train or plane?
Train.
Train or car?
Train.
Train or bike?
Train.
Bike or car?
Bike.
EYFDM or YAML?
EYFDM.
Forum or pre-conference?
Forum.
Organizing or attending a forum?
Attending.
Work-life balance or life-work balance?
Life work.
Patient care or policy work?
Patient care.
Patient care or EYFDM work?
Patient care.
EYFDM or WONCA?
EYFDM.
Master in public health or medical doctor?
Medical doctor.
Eisbach or Graz?
Eisbach.
Graz or Salzburg?
Graz.
Salzburg or Vienna?
Vienna.
Erasmus exchange or EYFDM exchange?
Erasmus.
France or Austria?
Austria.
French or English?
French.
English or German?
German.
Steyr or Graz?
Steyr.
Washing hands or hand sanitizer?
Washing hands.
Digital photos or printed photos?
Printed photos.
Letter or postcard?
Postcard.
Email or call?
Call.
Writing down or memorize?
Writing down.
Googling or knowing?
Googling.
Mozart or Schubert?
Mozart.
Working holiday or holiday work?
Skip.
Well-being or success?
Well-being.
Success or respect?
Respect.
Early riser or night owl?
Night owl.
Work hard or play hard?
Play hard.
Professional achievements or happiness?
Happiness.
Rooftop bar or restaurant dinner?
Rooftop bar.
International or regional?
International.
European or national?
European.
Acute care or chronic care?
Chronic care.
General medicine or palliative medicine?
General medicine.
General medicine or family medicine?
Family medicine.
Primary care or family medicine?
Primary care.
Specialty practitioner or general practitioner?
General practitioner.
Paramedic or doctor?
Doctor.
Specialist in training or doctor in training?
Skip.
National delegate for Austria or national exchange coordinator?
National delegate.
Photography or nature?
Nature.
Listening to music or playing music?
Playing music.
Classical or contemporary music?
Contemporary.
Breakfast or lunch?
Breakfast.
Lunch or dinner?
Dinner.
Being busy or taking time?
Taking time.
Being considerate or to execute?
Being considerate.
Financial prosperity or mental prosperity?
Mental.
Past or present?
Present.
Present or future?
Present.
That was it. I think we had quite a few word pairs with things that we haven't talked about. I remember reading that you are a paramedic, or you were a paramedic before actually going into medicine.
Yes.
So did being a paramedic convince you to become a doctor?
Yes, actually I started at the Austrian Red Cross when I was 16 or 17. So they have their youth group. And already a bit with the thought of becoming a doctor and trying out how it is to work with patients, because you can start as a paramedic when you are 17. And yes, it's something I did during med school. But I always felt that emergency medicine wasn't really my specialty. I like to have the time to consider and having the time to talking with patients, and yes.
And probably also having the opportunity to decide with them rather than for them.
Yes. It's something I really enjoy in palliative care now, because the focus is so much on deciding with the patient and taking time for decisions.
Very different to acute care, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Another thing that came up quite a lot, so work-life balance or happiness, well-being is a big topic for you, and also family life. I mean, having 3 children plus your full work week. How did you manage to plan and keep all these things afloat, especially family life and your professional career?
It's a good question, because I don't really have an answer for that. Sometimes I'm really struggling with this. It went really well until like 2 or 3 years ago. Then I would have answered yes. Somehow it's working out, and if you do something you like to do, then it's not work or something like that. But it started like 3 or 2 years ago, where I was really overworked and came in touch with burnout and depression, and wasn't really feeling well. So I had to rethink, and with help with a great psychologist, I'm really getting to know myself better, and I think that's key, to know yourself and to know what are your resources, and to find a balance between work and rest, and also to know when you need rest, and to be able and confident to say, okay, now I need rest. And it's a process, and I'm still learning. It's not easy always, but I think it works out at the moment quite well.
Thank you, Anna, for sharing that. I think that's something very important for young GPs, because you see all these high achievers in the field. Everyone has their special interest. You have 4 different special interests: public health, EYFDM, palliative care, being a specialist, having your entire family life set up, and a lot of us struggle, as you said at the beginning, with the idea of role modeling. And I think it's very important to see it's not an easy ball game.
Yes.
And no one has really figured it out.
I think it's also the reason why I share this private informations is because I would have loved to hear from somebody that they are struggling. Often you see your role models and you think, okay, their life is perfect, and how do they accomplish everything so easily? But to see that it's not always easy, but it's
worthwhile.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anna. I think that's a very valuable lesson that everyone at some point probably has to learn. And thanks for sharing that with us. Is there anything that you would like to share with people who think about getting involved with EYFDM, who are in training in their respective countries, wherever it is? Is there anything you want to share with them?
Yes, I think just get started. It's especially in EYFDM, everyone is so welcoming, and if you just visit a forum or a pre-conference and talk to other people, share your ideas. And as I could never have imagined to become an active member of EYFDM when I was in Porto, because everyone seemed so professional to me. But you're welcome in this community, and I think you really can get started, and then you see where you go.
Thanks. I think that's a very important point. Just as a reminder, we are now recording from Austria, but the next pre-conference is actually in Dublin in September 2024. And then there's the next tri-national forum in Luxembourg, Germany, and France. So those would be the next opportunities to get to meet the EYFDM community, I guess.
Yes.
And Anna said she prefers the forum, just as a note here. Thank you very much, Anna, for taking the time, for actually traveling to Salzburg just for this recording. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. At this point, a quick reminder, there is a study linked to this podcast. Have a look at the bio. It looks at why you listen to this podcast, and we'd love to hear from you. If you could spare 5 minutes to fill out the survey, that would be great. Thank you very much, Anna. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.